with a triceps extension, if I wanted to try to squeeze out at the top, I can do that, but the weight I have to use becomes so minuscule that the rest of the movement is just not useful. I do think the partials can be overdone. So your 0 reps in reserve there, maybe you're 5 or 6 here, maybe you're 8 or 9 here, and maybe you're 11, 12, 15, maybe even 20 at that full extension.
So I want to kick things off talking about optimal form. You've mentioned that your thinking on optimal form has evolved over time. And I've recently heard you say things like limiting factor is greater than range of motion. Can you talk through your evolution on this concept in as much detail as possible?
Sure. So I used to be a big proponent of having as much range of motion as possible on pretty much every single lift. So on, for example, a barbell back squat, you want to go as deep as possible. Or a hack squat or any other squat pattern, you want to go ATG. So you want to go all the way down until your hamstrings are touching your calves and they're totally covering them. However, actually the research, which I don't quote very much, but it doesn't really support this as necessarily being better for quadricep growth. And this has actually mirrored my own experiences, as well as looking at a lot of top high-level bodybuilders. A lot of them don't squat ATG like an Olympic lifter might. But I think this is because at a certain point, the quads are still getting range of motion, but what limits that very, very deep position are the adductors and the glutes. So if you go even deeper, you get more glutes, you get more adductors, but you don't really get any more quads. And I think in some cases, you might even get less quads. Because if you tell someone to squat to right around parallel, so squat down, push the knees forward, stay upright, and squat to around parallel, when you try to stand back up, you can feel the quads doing a lot more of the work than if you go down, 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 past parallel, all the way down, and use a rebound out of the bottom position and use the adductors and glutes to kind of get the movement started. So essentially, you're using quads on the way down, but at a certain point, when you go lower, people talk about like having a stretch on the quads. When I go ATG, and I can, it's not like I lack mobility or something, I don't feel a stretch on the quads in that bottom position. Additionally, it's not actually the most challenging part of the range of motion. If you squat ass to grass, the bottom position is not particularly difficult, right? You can do a pause squat and pause at the bottom and kind of just sit there. There's actually a video of Johnny Candido on YouTube from way back when, and he did like a 40-second pause squat with maybe 315 or something. He's looking around, he's chilling. He's at the bottom position, way just dunking it down. But he's pausing that long because it's actually not that difficult. It's not the most difficult part of the range of motion. Now, if he paused around parallel for 30 or 40 seconds, that's actually pretty brutal because it's a lot more challenging. So you have this phenomenon where the deeper you go, at a certain point, it actually starts getting easier, and you're bringing other muscle groups into play. And so I actually found that squatting, whether it's a hack squat or a back squat or a front squat or whatever it is, I actually found that squatting a little bit higher was more challenging, but it also seemed to be more quads because it biased the quads more. Another factor, there's a lot of factors here. Usually when you see someone squat very, very, very deep, often they lose that upright position. So they squat down, 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 and then often they're leaning forward a little bit in the bottom position. And then as they squat up, the first thing that happens is the hips shift back, and it turns more into a good morning. And so the lower back is coming into play, maybe even a little bit of hamstrings in some cases, especially if it's a low bar. And so they say, they're training the quads. But if you look at how they squat, the quads are not really the limiting factor. It's lower back or it's the hips. And the quads are doing something, right? If you're squatting down, the quads are always going to be doing something. but they're probably not limiting the movement as much as if you're not going quite as deep and you're staying a little bit more upright. And this applies to a lot of different movements. For example, on my dumbbell bench presses, I don't go as deep as I used to because I actually found that when I go all the way down, so you go down, 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 as you go all the way down, the dumbbells actually kind of tuck back in to the body. And someone might say, oh, you're getting a big stretch on the chest at the bottom. Well, if you're right near your armpits, again, similar to a squat, that's a pretty easy part of the range of motion. I mean, you can hold very heavy dumbbells because it's right near your armpits, right? So it's actually not very challenging. So I actually found that going a little bit higher, not going quite as deep, was more challenging, and it seemed to bias the chest more. When I went deeper, the triceps would come into play, the front delts would come into play a lot more. And so by limiting my range of motion, not like doing sort of quarter reps or baby reps, you see some people where they should be absolutely be going deeper, especially with the barbell. You see people unrack it and then just do these little sort of triceps bounces, and they're saying, oh, they're training their chest. They're not really. You do need a good amount of range of motion.
I was that person at one point.
It's very common.
Yeah.
And the thing with that is that you get used to this partial range of motion. And I've done lockouts in a power rack, where I'm doing 3-plate little sort of baby presses, and you can get very strong at that range of motion, but it's just not enough to really build muscle, right? So if someone's an equipped powerlifter, I think that has its place, but for the most part, you do need enough range of motion. I think a good rule of thumb is that if it makes the lift way easier, you're probably doing something wrong, right? So again, with the squat, you do see some people where they're doing quarter squats, they're getting like almost no range of motion. You can load up like 4 or 5, 6 plates. You see some guy walk in there with skinny little legs, and he just loads up a whole bunch of plates. All right, this should be good. And he gets these tiny little knee bends. That's where it's ego lifting, and you're not really doing anything. I also think that in terms of stimulus to fatigue ratio, that's not very much quads, and it is a lot of knees. So yeah, you do need to get some range of motion, but I do also think it's possible to get too much.
So I know when we chatted last time, you talked about you're doing like tricep ropes where you would keep the balls together, but you wouldn't finish the end of the motion. Like I think you'd go like this, but you wouldn't kind of go out. So I'm just curious, like, how do you think about those exercises, and what is the appropriate range of motion for you to get the stimulus you're looking for out of the muscle you are?
Yeah, so on some movements, I think getting like a peak contraction is sometimes useful, but you also kind of have to pick and choose your movements that are suitable to try to get that feeling, right? So let's say I'm doing a spider curl. So I'm lying face down on the bench, and it's a contraction-focused movement where, try not to knock anything over, where I'm lying face forward on the bench, and it's most challenging at the top, right? The bottom is extremely easy because my arms are straight down, and the top is where the most challenging part is. For that, I think trying to get a contraction is very, very useful. Same thing with a leg extension. Trying to really contract your quad high at the top, at that full contraction where there's a lot of resistance and it's very difficult. I think you get a lot more out of the movement by trying to do that. However, with a triceps extension, if I wanted to try to squeeze out at the top, I can do that, but the weight I have to use becomes so minuscule that the rest of the movement is just not useful. So I normally use probably 40 to 50, sometimes a little bit higher kilos for my overhead cable extensions. If I really want to squeeze out at the top and get that sort of sick, tight, contracting feeling, I would probably have to cut that in half, and which means that the rest of the range of motion probably just isn't being taken anywhere closer to failure. This part of the range of motion might be 20 reps in reserve because I'm trying to get that last little contraction. So I just don't think it's a suitable movement to try to do that. Now, I might do it on something else. For instance, if I'm doing a long rope push down, well, that is most challenging in that contracted position, right? So I have a longer rope, or maybe two ropes attached to the attachment, and then I'm trying to sweep back and really try to contract with the long head and the entire triceps in that most contracted position. Again, it's a contracted movement, and so that's sort of the purpose of that movement. But for an overhead extension, I'm trying to work on the stretch as well as sort of the mid-range, right? So I think this is where knowing the purpose of a movement is super important. For example, would I take a spider curl, which I mentioned earlier? So I'm lying face forward on the bench. It's very easy in that lengthened position. It's very difficult in the contracted. Would I try to load up a ton of weight and do like overloaded partials in the bottom position? No, because I could use a ton of weight, but it's not really the purpose of the movement. If I want to overload that position, I'll just do a preacher curl, right? Where it's already just naturally most challenging, more towards that part of the range of motion. So this is where exercise selection and knowing the purpose of each lift is very, very important. And I see this all the time where people sort of misapply a lift and misuse a lift, and it means that they actually end up getting less out of the movement.
Yeah, I think you hit on something really interesting, and it's something that I think about, which is if you don't know why you're doing the lift and the purpose of the lift, then it's possible that you are going to failure or zero RIR, but you actually have 4 to 6 in the tank on the specific muscle that you were actually trying to push to failure. And I know I've done that on things like dips in the past where I'm pushing really hard and then I'm like, my limiting factor was actually my triceps there based on how the movement was. So I might not actually be getting the stimulus on my chest that the paperwork and the progressive overload is maybe suggesting that I am. And I think that's why you need that honest reflection as what's the muscle and did I push that muscle to where I am or did I just push that movement and something else kind of gave out first?
100%. 100%. I think dips are a good example where the top is almost no chest. Maybe on a ring dip where you can kind of bring them across a little bit. But when you see someone struggle at the very top of a dip to try to, and usually it is most challenging at the top, right? You're
100%.
Really trying to get the triceps through, right? But if you're trying to train the chest, I often don't do that last little part of the range of motion.
Same. Yeah.
Right? I stay lower in the range of motion to try to keep it on the chest. And so sometimes, I see someone doing dips and they go down, 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 and they're kind of leaning forward as they go. But then as they go up, they kind of drive their head back. And so it's like this kind of movement. And so they're essentially missing the bottom part of the range of motion because they're driving back with the head. And so they're not really getting chest there. And then the limiting factor is just like, can they lock it out with the triceps? And so it can sometimes be a hit to the ego. I mean, I'll get people who are much stronger than me on paper. And they're asking me, oh, but I'm not as big as you. And often it's from how they're performing the lifts. Like I could use more weight on a whole bunch of the lifts that I do. I often don't even add weight to dips because I find that I don't need to. And that is just a mindset shift to a lot of people that they're not able to make because they're so fixated on the weight that they're lifting. And I know that if they tried to do things my way, they probably couldn't But I also know they probably wouldn't be willing to do it my way because they are so attached to the weight that they're lifting. And often these people are very, especially if they're very strong, they are very aggressive with how they lift the weight. And I'll have videos of them, like they're getting excited before a lift, they're getting really, really pumped. And the reps are like boom, 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 fail. And they're often very strong, but I can tell it's like a whole body movement. Every lift they do is whole body. So they might say, oh, I benched 3.5 plates for blah, 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 blah. But it's the whole body. There's this big arch and there's drive and there's sort of oomph. And you can go pretty far with that. And I'm not saying it's wrong. It's a hell of a lot of fun to train that way. But it also, you have to have some intellectual humility to look at someone else who trains differently and is not hitting the same numbers, and you have to understand why. Why are you stronger on paper, and yet this person is bigger? Often it's because they are lifting in a different way that is inherently more challenging.
Yeah, I think the way to think about it is there might be a certain part of the resistance curve that they could not do as many reps as you with the same weight with good form. So an example is like for cable lateral raises, sometimes I'll start here and I'll go to here, just that range. And I was working out with someone and they were kind of just throwing it up, and I was getting them to do that range, and they could do way, way, way less weight. They've never done that range of motion with good form because they've always kind of pushed through that range from the bottom, just using momentum, getting through the hard part and then going up. So they actually never worked that part of the movement ever.
Yeah. And especially on smaller movements, like a cable lateral raise, the obliques and the hips, they're so much stronger than the actual delt that you can see someone, even just a slight cheat, and you can double the weight you use. And that can make progressive overload tracking be difficult, especially if the form is kind of deteriorating over time. And you can try stuff like pausing the reps or being very, very strict. But I think ultimately it has to come down to understanding what you are doing. I would say out of all the cable lateral raises I've seen, probably less than 10% are actually getting a nice big stretch on the side delt. Because often people kind of lean into it, right? So that it's coming down, but they kind of like lean into the weight so that the tension dissipates in that bottom position. They're not sort of keeping the torso upright and allowing the weight to stretch across them. Alberto Nunez does this really, really well.
Oh, yeah, really, he loves delts though. He's obsessed with delts. So
yeah, no. It's I'm sure it's been a long time practicing that, but once you see it, especially when someone's lean, it is so obvious what is going on. Like I can see him lift, and I watch him. I follow his stuff on YouTube.
Oh yeah,
he's a master. Like I can look at him do his exercises, and I'm like, yep, he knows exactly what he's doing. But that's rare. That's very rare to see.
But he has that personality trait too, just to maybe go a little off track, where he is so focused on like quality and mastery that he's willing to like not even put his ego to side, but he views it as a third person. Like he views his lift as if he's watching himself lift and trying to be objective. And that's it's actually a great quality to have.
I think putting stuff out there on YouTube or social media in general, that is one of the best ways to stay accountable, because you know that you're going to watch it after and you're going to have to explain that to everyone else. And it leads to better execution, and that doesn't necessarily always mean stricter. There are still some movements that I like a good amount of oomph too, but yeah, you have to take this sort of eyes on yourself approach, because you have to explain yourself essentially potentially to the world.
Yeah, fair enough. So I know we're talking about like optimal form and range of motion. So are you using partials when you feel that there's a part of the range of motion that you haven't pushed hard enough and you want the opportunity to push hard enough? Is that kind of how you think about when to use partials?
Yeah, there are some that I don't use them as much on. I would say rows are the movement pattern that I use them on the most. So you have hinge, squat, push, pull, row, curls, extensions, and overhead presses, I guess. On overhead presses, I don't use them much, or on pushes typically, because often performance degrades very, very quickly. So you hit failure, and then it's sort of tough to keep going. I have occasionally written in partials, but it's more typically on maybe like a seated barbell press where form can't really break down, or maybe a machine chest press where a lot of hammer strength machine presses and often machine presses in general, they're more challenging in the contracted position. And so you can actually kind of get in a few partials on those. But I would say rows are the most common movement pattern that I do them on, particularly like chest supported or machine rows, because it is so much more challenging in that peak contracted position. If you think about it in terms of, okay, you did your last full range of motion rep, so that's a 0 rep in reserve at that position. But what about midway back? You might be 6 reps in reserve right there. And what about full stretch? You might be like 15 reps in reserve in this position, right? So as you're hitting failure where most people would stop, although some people stop even earlier than that, that's still fairly common. But let's say someone's going to technical failure. Oh no, I couldn't get that full contraction. So you're 0 reps in reserve there. Maybe you're 5 or 6 here. Maybe you're 8 or 9 here. And maybe you're 11, 12, 15, maybe even 20 at that full extension, right? Like you can still keep doing this for a while. Now, I don't always go 15 reps beyond failure, but I have. I have. It's a little bit difficult to measure progress at that point and apply progressive overload. But I think knowing the biomechanics of the lift will tell you how suitable it is, right? On something like a Romanian deadlift, I don't ever do any reps beyond failure because the risk to reward, it's just not worth it. It doesn't make sense. And it's a lengthened biased movement where it's going to be most challenging pretty darn low, pretty close to the floor. For example, if you pause a deadlift right off the floor, that is brutal. Pause it around knees, really not that bad at all. Pause it just before lockout, the lift is already done, essentially, unless you really rounded your back over a lot. And so you can't really do partials beyond failure on an RDL. Same thing with
squats.
Yeah, again, anything spinal loaded, I'm a lot more risk averse with. And not just because of my injury issues, but I think just more generally,
it's not worth the risk reward.
Yeah, it's more fuck upable. That's how I think about it. Like
it is. Yeah.
I'm not going to write in something where probably 50% or more of people are going to mess it up, and it's going to be like it's going to be a pain to try to correct for really no reward. Mm-hmm. I would say the only hinge I might go beyond failure with personally would be a back extension, just because it is, again, more contraction focused and it's often more challenging at the top. And so you can kind of get to where, you get the hips through barely. You can do a couple partials on there. I do think the partials can be overdone. If you're doing a chest supported row, maybe I'll see someone do a whole bunch of partials, but I can tell that they are low quality partials where they're not really trying. They're kind of just like, partial time. Okay, I'm gonna kind of just go through the motions. you have to really be trying to drive back as far as possible every single rep, and you're trying to squeeze as far as you get, and then also resist on the eccentric and then drive on the concentric. So essentially you're trying to make the whole range of motion challenging, and that's just not going to be possible for most people when they know they have 10 partials to go. So I think for most people, if I do introduce it, first of all, it's not even probably worth doing unless they have a few years in the gym, so probably intermediate at least. But I would probably do just a few partials, because if you have 2 partials or 3 partials or 4 partials, you can wrap your head around that and you can execute pretty well and pretty cleanly. But if I tell someone, keep going until you can't move at all, it's just going to result in a pile of slop. So it's just not worth it.
For sure. All right, I'm going to move topics here. So you've talked about lifters' amnesia before. It's something that makes us disconnect with our audience, kind of no fault to our own. Why do you think this happens? And then is there an area that you've caught yourself having lifters' amnesia?
Let's see. It is very prevalent, and I would say this happens more often with enhanced guys because most of their audience is not enhanced. And so there are some enhanced guys who I do follow and I get valuable information from. It seems to be mostly guys who spend a lot of time natural and have the ability to remember what it was like as a natural lifter. And so their advice is a little bit more grounded. I would say probably expectations of what good progression is, because I'm undoubtedly and arguably advanced now. So I'm probably looking at 1 to 2 pounds of muscle growth a year from here on out. I've gained probably 4 to 5 over the past 2 years, roughly. And so most of my audience should not expect 1 to 2 pounds a year. They should. I think for most people, if you gain 1 or 2 pounds of muscle growth a year, and it was the main focus that you're trying to partake in, I think that's a sign that things didn't go that well. But for me, if I gained 1.5 pounds in a year, that's actually a pretty good year. So yeah, just realizing that I'm in a different stage compared to most of my viewers or listeners is important. I would say I'm pretty good at this just because I have a pretty good amount of empathy, I guess. You see some fitness people where I don't think they have very much of that in store at all. Also, coaching does help as well because I do see stuff on a regular basis. And if someone's a content creator and they're on steroids that they started right away and they've never coached people and they have an adoring fan base that will never, ever call them out, yeah, they're going to be in trouble because they're going to think that any idea they have is going to be great. And there are definitely some big channels that I think the best thing for them would be to hire someone to just double check the content they put out to make sure it actually made sense, because it's just so easy to get high off your own farts. It really is. I see it all the time. And so, yeah, I try not to do that because it's nasty. But it's something that is very, very common. Yeah.
All right. So I have one that I think not just for, I just think it's in general in the natural community that I think is an amnesia. And I'm just curious your thoughts on it. So I think the biggest one is how people think it's kind of effortless to cut, like it's an acquired skill and then you have it forever. But I think the reality is a ton of the YouTubers have an environment that's ideal for this. They are married. They don't go out socially. A lot of them moved away from their hometowns. They don't have a ton of social engagements, and they have financial and social incentive to eat healthy and cut. So I
No,
I
yeah.
feel like that might be one that I feel like there's a general disconnect. I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
No, yeah, I agree. And this is where, again, the coaching does help with that, because I see the struggles that a lot of which for me are kind of already dialed in. So they aren't really struggles, right? Like if I had kids, things would be a lot more difficult. I don't keep snack food around the house or any kind of stuff like that. But if someone's a new parent, there are probably, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that is going to be more challenging in terms of timing, in terms of recovery, in terms of sleep. I mean, I have it pretty good, I would say, from a muscle growth standpoint or from a cutting standpoint, and I'm able to not quite live like a professional athlete, but a lot closer to a professional athlete compared to the average person, I would say. So I can set my own schedule. I don't have to wake up to an alarm. I can kind of do things when I want to. I can spend as much time in the gym as I want. I mean, I've worked with people where they have 45 minutes. They don't have 60 minutes, they have 45 minutes. And so you have to adjust. And for me, if I wanted to, I could spend 8 hours a day in the gym if I I don't want to do that, but if I did, I could do doubles. I could lift twice a day. I don't do that because I don't want to, but I could, right? I don't think I would ever lift twice a day, but some people do that. They have like a morning session, an evening session. Most endurance athletes train twice a day, if not doing triples. I think most top CrossFitters, most professional sports, they're training multiple times a day. I think even the top level natural bodybuilders don't typically do that. So actually, natural bodybuilding is often a smaller time commitment than most other high level sports. So, but I do have it better than most, and it's something that I do try to account for. And then the incentive thing, it does play a role. Often I see this in the context of you have no incentive to stay natural, which is wild, which is a wild thing to say. Like I have no incentive to stay natural. Like I could think of many reasons, but for some people, they have the idea that the key to blowing up on social media is having like a big, larger than life physique, which is going to necessitate drugs. And that's definitely not the case. Plenty of people have made it, at least made a living, if not done extremely well, doing things naturally. But it does require living the lifestyle, which can be difficult to do if it's essentially not your job. And so, yeah,
Yeah,
when people say, "Oh, everyone has the same 24 hours," well, not exactly.
yeah. I'm just thinking through like, our audience who might be younger and is in their 20s and they don't have a life partner yet. Like they're not married. So they're kind of going out and trying to meet people and they're going out
Yeah,
to more birthdays and stuff like that. So it just socially ends up being harder than for people who have created
yeah,
environment, which is a great thing, so they can be locked in easier.
yeah. I mean, that was a big part of my 2016 to 2018, where yeah, I was going out a lot. I started a language exchange here in Shenzhen. We built it up to like 40, 50, 60 people a night. But we would go out afterwards and we'd have a big Friday night. Actually, it was Saturday night, I think. But we would go out, we'd go out to a club, we'd get a table, we'd have bottles. Like it was a big thing. And then, obviously I was single at the time, it was before I met my wife. And so that was not great for gains or for
That's what I'm
cutting.
saying, right? Yeah, it's the
Yeah, so
environment.
so yeah, exactly. So and I think the answer is never to try to like shame someone into changing their lifestyle, because I don't regret doing that. It wasn't, I mean, 2018 wasn't a great year of muscle growth, but I still made some gains, and I wouldn't take that back. I had a lot of fun times. And then got more serious in 2019, where cutting was easier because I was broke. that does play a role. Poverty macros. But at that point, I was trying to get into the fitness industry, and I thought, okay, well, I have to be lean. You have to be shredded to be in the fitness industry. And I was taking pictures for my first book, Sweat, and I kept forgetting pictures to take. So I kind of just stayed lean for like 6 months because one more week, I got to take these pictures. Oh yeah, cable lateral raises, I forgot those. Crap, I gotta stay lean another few days. But yeah, for the average person, they're not incentivized to do that, but they also don't really get any benefit from getting really lean. So it's like they're not as incentivized, but also why would they want to do that in the first place? I think for most people to just have a healthy lifestyle, that is very much more doable than like doing a show or getting shredded or having this larger than life physique. So
it's
fewer
doable.
incentives, but more doable.
Yeah, I have probably like 2 or 3 social engagements a week. I live a pretty busy lifestyle around friends and family, and I have kids. I just make it work. Like, I just make smarter decisions on a day-to-day basis. So it's doable, right? Like, I kind of eat the same lunch every day. It's super boring. And then if we're going out at night, I'll just kind of like make smart decisions if we're at restaurants or for at friends' houses. Like, it's not impossible, but it is harder than if I was making my own dinner at home. If I'm eating out like 4 times a week because I'm at a parent's house or a friend's house or a kid's birthday party, like it's definitely more challenging. But you don't kind of I don't want to say you don't choose your life, but you have your life and you have to work within those circumstances.
Yeah, this is where like say you wanted to prepare for a bodybuilding show, that's where you might make some different decisions. And I think as long as the goals and the decisions are in alignment, then you'll get to where you want to go. It's the issues when those sort of drift apart.
Yeah,
right?
my goals are easy. It's like stay between 12 and 18, 20% body fat, depending on what I'm feeling. Like it's not impossible to do.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna throw some quotes out here. Give me your first take. So the first one here is, I still look forward to all my workouts and all my movements that I'm doing. And if I find that I don't, I will change something.
Yeah, no, that still holds true. And I think motivation and interest in what you're doing, it's so important. It's so important. And if you're dreading a movement, there's almost always an alternative that's going to be about as good, sometimes better, especially if you're more interested and motivated to do it. So there are some lifts that I just don't really do because they don't interest me or they don't motivate me or they don't feel as good. I mean, I haven't barbell bench pressed in months because I don't know, I haven't really been in the mood to do it. I'll probably do it again at some point and try to convert the dumbbell strength that I've gained to a barbell. And there's probably going to be some benefits in that transition. But yeah, if you don't want to do something, it's so rarely worth doing. Maybe if someone's a professional athlete, you could argue that. I mean, there are some very, very good athletes who they don't enjoy strength training, but they do it because it keeps them healthy or it improves their performance and it brings them benefit and it helps them do what they love. There are some movements that they fall into that category for me, like a lot of core work, side bends, oblique work, that kind of stuff. It's okay. It's kind of grown on me a little bit at times, but it's still something that I kind of have to force myself to do. But I know that if I don't do it, it's a matter of time before I have some issue or another. And so I really have to stay on top of like the planks, the side planks with leg raises, that kind of stuff. Palloff presses. None of this stuff is sexy. It's not going to go viral on social media. It doesn't even feel cool when you're doing it. But yeah, it's important enough that for me, it makes it worth doing. And I know that just because when I don't do it, again, I have issues. So you kind of have to assess every movement in your program if it's worth doing or not. And sometimes something is worth doing, and then eventually it kind of becomes a little bit stale and you want to do something else. And that's totally normal. I do think that especially if someone is a beginner and maybe to a certain extent intermediate, they probably want a little bit more continuity within their program. I mean, if someone's like, oh, coach, I know I said I wanted to do these lifts, but actually I want to do these lifts. And it's been a week. And then a week later, they're like, actually, at a certain point, I'm like, all right, well, you can't switch all your movements all the time and still expect good results.
Program hopping gives you zero data. So if you have zero data, how are you going to improve, right? Like, it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, I would rather have them keep something in that maybe isn't as good, and so we can actually get some information on if it is or not, right? Because and sometimes something feels bad at first, but then a few weeks later, it's like you figure something out about it, or maybe you move a little bit differently, or you position your torso, or you build up a mind-muscle connection, or whatever it is. And I've had movements that I hated before, but now I actually look forward to a lot. And that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't kind of gone through that transition in the first month or two of keeping it in and kind of learning to love it.
Yeah. I think if you've been training, let's say at least 5 years, then this definitely applies. If you don't like it, you really don't have to be doing it.
Yeah, because then you have such a broad pool of lifts that you can do. And I also think there is something to muscle memory where, I mean, if someone is a beginner and they've never squatted, it's going to take a while to kind of get that going. But if someone has years and years of training, yeah, there's going to be this process of relearning and motor coordination and blah, blah, blah. But it does come back a lot more quickly. I will say that on isolations and machines, generally speaking, you can swap stuff out a lot more freely. Like I get questions on my bro day, which is basically arms and shoulder isolations. I'll sometimes get questions of, well, why are you doing this movement? Why are you doing that movement? I thought you were doing this movement. Well, on that day, it's all isolations pretty much, or almost all isolations. And so you can swap stuff out a lot more freely and it won't impact progress. But on lower body stuff, I like to have a lot more consistency just because there's a lot more going on in terms of how you organize your body and the bracing and the coordination and everything. And so I like to have a lot more continuity on that day.
Cool. All right. Next one. I think this is actually pretty timely. They say something controversial and then later the nuance comes. Sometimes it comes at the end of the video or it doesn't even come at all. It's just a way to sell. They want attention. So they say controversial, stupid bullshit. So people make videos about them because any attention in fitness becomes money.
Yeah, and it's something that is often sad to see. I think Renaissance periodization is kind of the poster child of that, where it was just this snowballing year by year where things got more and more ridiculous. And it's very easy to get caught in this loop as a content creator of, I say wild stuff, it goes viral, I get more attention and more subscribers and ultimately more money, and it incentivizes more wild stuff. But then on the flip side of that, you still want to try to keep your reputation as a good source of information. And so later there's clarifications or, oh, I didn't quite mean that, or I was taken out of context. And often they weren't taken out of context, or often it was said. And at a certain point, you just can't trust someone with what they say because they backpedal so much of what they say that they say something else and you're like, do they really believe that? Is it just for attention? And so it's effective from a growth standpoint. But man, if you get a lot of followers and subscribers out of saying that kind of stuff, is it really worth it? I don't know. And I try to give props. I call out the bad stuff, but I also try to give props when they do good things. Like I've called out Milo Wolf for misinterpreting some studies and maybe putting out some clickbait kind of stuff. But then if he does something good, I'm like, hey, that was awesome. Hell yeah, I thought this was very nuanced, or I thought this infographic really nailed things. So I think without giving credit where it's due and when it's due, you're kind of just a hater, right? Like you're kind of just the endless critic who is critiquing people. So it's a trap that I haven't gotten into, or at least I don't think I've gotten into. Let me know how I'm doing. But it's one that I can feel, and it's one that I know that if I said something or used a certain title or a certain thumbnail or said something and then clipped it and made it into a short and sent it out there, calories don't matter.
That's
it
going to
would
get
do
200,000
well.
views if you posted that today. 100%. GVS,
Yeah,
calories don't matter. I need to watch this, right? Like,
yeah. But it's bullshit. And the sad part is bullshit does so well. And I've seen a number of channels where they
cool.
started out calling out
That's what I'm
bullshit,
saying. Yeah.
and then they became the bullshit.
Yeah. Greg
And often
Doucette's
they
the
get
best example for that,
oh my yeah,
right?
it's maybe he was
Of,
always full of shit,
of
but
course.
yeah, you can see the degradation
But I can
of
tell you why. So I've thought about this because when I worked at Google, a lot of my peers had this mentality of like leveling up, right? So there's this idea of like, I'm leveling up and now I'm only hanging out with VPs at Google and I'm like not hanging out with my childhood friends. Like there's this mentality of leveling up. So I think you're seeing this because I know you mentioned the Mr. Beastification and stuff. So what ends up happening is people get really big and then they start making peers with other people that are really big. And those
mm,
people got really big because they did some more questionable behaviors. And because it's okay in that group, now everyone does it because if I don't do it, someone else will do it. And then they level up again. And now this side is even more clickbait and questionable. And it kind of goes on in this effort of like, well, I'm just doing what's right for my business. But like, maybe they started with like a soul of an artist and now that soul is just lifeless. Like I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's kind of what I imagine is happening.
that makes a lot of sense. And what's the quote? If you stare deep into the abyss stares back at you. And yeah, you start off calling out bullshit and try to make the world a better place, but then it kind of corrupts you and you see other people, quote unquote, getting ahead of you, at least in terms of views or subscribers or money or whatever. And it's very easy to justify it. Oh, these people are giant pieces of shit. So if I'm just a little bit of a piece of shit, like it's okay, right? And I'll use the money I make from being a little bit of a piece of shit to keep calling out the big ones. So like it's okay. And yeah, that rarely ends well. And I think the leveling up thing is particularly pertinent because yeah, you do see people do a collab, and after that everything does change a little bit.
Mhm.
And you can almost track their descent morally as the ascent in subscribers or whatever it is happens. And I'm not saying every CEO is a piece of garbage, um, but there's probably some trends there that if you really dug deep, you could probably see, okay, they're in this position because they had to make some decisions.
Yeah, decisions are made. And I was actually trying to think why you don't come across very cringe and you're likable even though you call people out. And I think it's because you come from a perspective of being charitable first. So you give people the benefit of the doubt, and then there's like a line that's crossed, and if the line's crossed, you'll call them out. but you'll start from giving people the benefit of the doubt. And I think not everyone does that.
Yeah, and I mean, I mentioned Milo Wolf the earlier in the video. Because I realize it is difficult, and you do fall into these traps. Excuse me. And if you double down, it rarely ends well. For example, I've had a number of people say, "Oh, GVS, you're on steroids." What if I'm a dick back to them? Well, that's not gonna end well. They're gonna double down as well, and everyone doubles down, and eventually, you're just shouting at each other. But I've had a number of interactions, and this isn't super common, but I've had a number of interactions where someone's like, "You're clearly juiced," and I was like, "Okay, well, I'm not, but have a good day," or whatever. And they're like, and then they responded back a few hours later, like, "Actually, I think you might be natural. I looked through your page, and your progression looks pretty reasonable, and you clearly work hard, and you don't have any side effects, and you seem to know what you're talking about, and maybe I was wrong. Maybe you actually are natural." That doesn't happen very often, but if I was just instantly a dick to them, that would never have happened. So yeah, I try to be charitable when I can. At a certain point, someone kind of becomes irredeemable. If V-Shred reached out for a collab, no, too far gone. And it's difficult to decide when that point is, right? Because there are bad people, and there are maybe good people who do bad things. How many bad things do you have to do as a good person before you're no longer a good person? Essentially, I guess that's the slippery slope. And I definitely see more good in people than some other content creators, and I try to understand that often it's someone just responding to incentives, and it's not necessarily them, it's the incentives, and maybe they just weren't strong enough to say no. And so at a certain point, yeah, someone is just a bad person, but maybe for me that line is a little bit further than some other people. And I've even had friends of mine, who they're like, "Why are you engaging with this person? They put out this study that's bad." And I'm like, well, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to vilify them and call them out on everything and shut them off, because then they're just going to double down on that, right? So you've kind of lost them to that side forever, right?
Yeah, it's just a interesting situation. I even realized it just podcasting. The deeper I got into the fitness industry and interviewing people, I'm just like, oh, like you see the incentives, you see behavior change, and it's interesting to watch. I understand why it happens. It's interesting to watch from the sidelines.
Yeah,
and don't give us Canadians too much credit. We're sharks too. I'll just say that. Okay. So you once said, "Some people ask me why I train every day or close to it. It's because I enjoy it, but it's more than that. I fucking need it." I remember many years ago, I sprained my wrist badly during a motorcycle accident. Some locals scraped me out of the ditch and thought I was dead. That gives you perspective. So is that what keeps you going now, or what keeps you going?
No, I would say I'm a lot more balanced with my outlook. Where if I can't train now, I'm okay with it. Whereas before, yeah, as a runner, and the thing is, you don't actually get better results from that level of like obsession or maybe passion. Those two kind of have some overlap, but yeah, like just constantly running yourself into the ground. Once you get to a certain level of being able to push yourself, it's not actually productive to push yourself harder, right? This is where harder than last time, okay, for 90% of people or more, it's really good advice, but the professional coaches of most elite athletes, they're not like, "Come on, push harder." Really, they're not doing that drill sergeant thing. They're holding the athlete back from fucking destroying themselves, because they have the ability to push themselves so hard that they could wreck themselves in a matter of days if they really kind of let loose. So yeah, I would say I'm a lot more balanced than I used to be. Partly maybe just mellowing a little bit with age. That was back when I was maybe 22 or 23, I want to say.
Okay, so
And now I'm 36, so I've definitely chilled out a little bit. But also, it's just better. It's just more productive to be able to chill out a little bit. I have like an hour or two of war a day, and then 22 to 23 hours of
not
blissful peace. So yeah, I know if I'm not training, I'm not typically thinking about training unless it's a podcast. Damn it, you're ruining my recovery.
I've definitely
No, but
ruined your recovery. I think
um,
early on you need to maybe be a little crazy and a little over the top, so it kind of forms into your identity and who you are. But
for
once
sure,
that's locked in, then you can kind of like ease back a bit. But if you
for
don't
sure. Like
push, like if you try to be like, oh, I'll give the 70% the first year, because I know I'm gonna get 70% of the games, you might stop working out.
yeah, for sure. I mean, a good example is Sean Nalawani, where he's
Yeah.
talked about as a young lifter, he did some crazy, crazy stuff.
Yeah, he'd set up
Taking
squat racks in his backyard, like with
yeah,
random equipment because he couldn't miss his workouts. Yeah.
yeah. And he's a lot more chill now, and his results are better. And you could argue his results would have been better as a younger lifter if he had been more chill. But I think if you're the kind of person who gets into lifting and you're like, yeah, this is okay, a year into it, you're probably just never gonna achieve the top level kind of stuff, right? Like if I get a client and then they've been lifting 10 years and they kind of look okay, and they're like, yeah, the goal is WNBF World Championship or something. I'm like, well,
Good luck with that.
for a variety of reasons, let's moderate the goals a little bit. But yeah, you do see this pretty consistently with the ones who went really far. They tried to go really fast, really quick, really early, and then they mellowed out later. But you don't really see people who got into it and they're like, yeah, this is okay. And then they like found the passion later. I don't know, maybe, but I see it way more often the latter, where or the former rather, where you're going really hard, really early, too hard, and then you kind of chill out a little bit later.
Yeah, so even I'd say like this isn't lifting, but for podcasting. So when I interviewed Alan Thrall, maybe my fourth interview, I think I did 70 hours of research. I think I listened to every podcast he had ever done. You know what I mean? And I've
Yeah.
kind of chilled out a bit. I still do more than like 99% of people, but like at the beginning I was like I can't miss anything. Alan, it's a big deal. I want to do my best job. I'm going to watch everything. Like I didn't have to watch everything, but I watched everything. And it was
Yeah.
totally over the top. But you get that wisdom as you do things for a bit of time. You're like, okay, that was maybe a bit much. I didn't have to watch every video and every podcast and have
He has a lot of
46
videos
pages of
too.
notes.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's great. And I'm sure that was a lot of content because he's been putting out stuff for
Oh
probably a
yeah.
decade or more. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of content. So you once made a video called 15 criminally underrated fitness YouTubers. If you were to make that now, what's your Mount Rushmore, the four most underrated fitness YouTube channels and why?
Oh man. Let's see. So four, I guess. Four. I would say actually let me look up that video and see if there's any that still stand out to me from that video. I would say Jonathan Warren, first of all. I forget how many subscribers he has now, but he's still very underrated.
Like 10 to 15,
Um,
somewhere in that range. Yeah.
yeah, because it's Yeah, the information that he puts out has been very, very helpful for me personally. So it's a little bit of a bias, and I think it's good to get a whole bunch of different sources of biomechanical information because everyone has a little bit of a different perspective on things, on how to move and which models that they're using. And ultimately, I think the best solution is to take whatever information someone has and then kind of just apply it to yourself and try it. Like ultimately, you have to go into the gym and try things for yourself. So that's a good one. I would say looking through, man, a lot has changed as a 4 years ago. I would say I'm going to say FitLab as well. He hasn't posted as frequently, but in terms of production quality, amazing. I mean, he puts a ton of effort into his videos, and you might even argue a bit too much, right? That it would be good to post more frequently, but yeah, he's on point with everything he does. I would say also. Should I say Abel? I'm gonna say Abel. He doesn't post as much either, but I think he's making a bit of a comeback. So I think people should check his stuff out. So I'm gonna say SSD Abel, and I'm gonna say Ben Carpenter as well. I'm not sure how much he posts on YouTube, but he's certainly very active on Instagram, and he definitely has some good takes where. Like you mentioned charity before, you can tell that he also leads with charity, and he's very reasonable in his BS calling out, because there's BS calling out where you're just being vicious and mean and that kind of stuff, but then there's also kind of leading with understanding and trying to have empathy and be reasonable. So he's really, really good at that. So yeah, that would be my 4.
Sweet. Yeah, check out those channels, boys. Just trying to always give some love to smaller channels. Always a good thing.
Yeah.
All right. Here's a hard one, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. But whose opinion do you respect more, Alex Leonidas or Alberto Nunez?
Oh man, that's a bit of a golden apple. I definitely have followed both of them for probably about 8 or 9 years, maybe 10. And man, they're both so on point. And I think the biggest thing that they have in common is that they're always still learning as well as always still doing. You see some people where they keep learning, but they're not necessarily like actually experimenting in their training. They're kind of just going through the motions. And then you see other people where they're still doing the thing, but they're not really learning new stuff. I could tell both of them are always kind of keeping their ear to the ground and trying to learn new stuff about training, about programming, exercise selection, execution, biomechanics, and it shows in their content for both of them. So I don't know if I can pick both just one. I'll probably just glaze both of them.
You can glaze both. I left that open, definitely. I was like, who is two really hard people that's going to make this uncomfortable for GVS?
That's exactly what. Yeah, I can't pick just one. And yeah, they're both great. I watch both of their stuff on a very regular basis, and yeah, they're both like good dudes. You can tell they're humble and really good at what they do as well. So yeah, both guys are awesome. I can't pick one.
All right, I'm gonna hit you with a deep cut here. So, where did you learn more analytical skills? Video games like Baldur's Gate and Planescape Torment, or Doc J's physics class?
Oh man, wow, that is a deep cut. I would say analytical skills. I would say, well, I spent a lot more time playing Baldur's Gate. So just by area under the curve, it's probably that. I would say actually, I learned more of my vocabulary for like the SAT and stuff from Baldur's Gate, because they had actually it was a lot of reading, and same with Planescape Torment. It's been described as like a novel that you play, and so yeah, I think building up my vocabulary from there was of great use for the verbal SAT. In terms of analytical skills, gaming is funny because I think you can get a lot from it, but at a certain point, it also starts taking more than it gives you. And so, but then you're kind of locked in this pattern of playing too much, right? And so, in Doc J's physics class, man, that was a long time ago. It was like probably 20 years. You do, dude. I don't even know how you figured. I don't know where you dug that up. Nice job. Greatest research out there. Yeah, I would say I learned a lot from that. He was sort of a bit of an interesting dude, where he would never look us in the eyes, right? Like if he's having a conversation, he'd be sort of like looking up at the back wall. And so like the first week of class, we're all like, what's up there? What's going on over there? But I think it was just like, I don't know. He wouldn't look people in the eyes. He would always be sort of off to the side or in the distance. But yeah, he's a very smart guy, and I enjoyed his class a lot. I thought about being a physics major for a little while, but eventually went to engineering, and then statistics, and then finally economics. So yeah, I would say probably overall the gaming side of things. But I think it's worth noting that you do get pretty diminishing returns and then negative returns at a certain point.
Yeah, a lot of the really successful people I know were gamers, and now they don't play games as much. They still play, but they're not like gaming addicts. Like they were at one point, but now they're not. So like recovering.
Yeah, I think
I don't know how to
there's a
explain
lot
it.
of I think there's a lot of similarities. They probably still play games. It's just somewhere else, right? They still have that like driven sort of dopamine seeking, kind of like goal oriented. Oh, get to the next level
For sure.
up,
100%.
gain experience. It's just not necessarily in the context of a game. And I also do think that people mellow out with age, right? Like how many people are 50 or 60 years old and they still have the exact same mindset, whereas a teenager, oh man, like it's just easier to get for them to get sucked into that kind of thing. So yeah, I think this is also a case of often people kind of mellowing with age.
Yeah, totally makes sense. So I'm going to move into a kind of funny conversation here. So as someone who eats Asian food almost daily, it's important for me to not just eat American food. And when I watch all of these videos on how to eat healthy and how to have good diets, it's like this really cookie cutter, bland food. You're obviously eating Chinese food all the time. So what are some go-to dishes that you like that are not just plain meat and rice?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think people default to chicken breast, broccoli, and rice to the point where it's almost a meme. And so I haven't had that in a long time. I mean, obviously rice does float in. I would say it does vary a little bit based on if I'm kind of bulking up or
Sure.
cutting down. Obviously, I eat more when bulking, and rice does increase quite a bit. And then when I'm cutting, I tend to get stuff more from like potato or sweet potatoes, which aren't really Asian. Shenzhen's a big enough city that I could kind of have whatever I wanted, right? Like, so I could order pizza if I wanted. I don't have it very often, or burgers or kind of whatever I wanted. Right now, I've been having it's called changfen. It's essentially rice noodles with like some meat inside, and then you pour over. I already ate it. It's sort of the bag is sitting over there.
XO sauce stuff, or no?
Yeah. So there's this sort of like somewhat salty sauce that you pour over it, and that's really good. I do like and do very well with carbs. So I'm not going to be doing a keto diet anytime soon. And I think if you tell most Chinese people just the idea of keto, they're like, "What this sounds horrible." No, and I have noticed also often Asian people don't necessarily do well on keto. Maybe it's an ancestry thing, genetic thing, whereas like a Northern European might do better. For me, I usually don't have breakfast. I used to on the way when I was a teacher. I would walk to school and I would get from a street vendor kind of what's it called? Jinbing. It's like a kind of fried pancake kind of thing. And yeah, I really like Chinese street food. I've never had any digestive issues with street food. I think a lot of people hear street food and they think disaster, but I've never had any issues with that. And then I often have like a kind of a salad with some kind of lean meat in the evening. So my diet's pretty basic. I kind of eat the same thing on a pretty regular basis. And I think that's almost the cost of not counting calories to a certain extent.
Sure. Yeah, you can't
You can have
in as
flexibility
much.
somewhere, but not everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, so I live like I grew up in a very, I guess, like Cantonese type area, if that makes sense. So we had like a lot of dim sum. So like for lunch, I almost eat, I don't know if you know what like hargao is. It's like it's a shrimp dumpling with the rice noodle around it. So I eat like 12 of those for lunch. And I just put it in a steamer and then like it's just protein and carbs. So it's like you can eat good healthy food that has like good taste that is of different cultures. That's all I'm saying, right? Like it's high protein, it's high carb, but it's pretty low fat, and then have some soy sauce or whatever with it, or it's not a bad meal.
Yeah, that's usually what people refer to when they say good macros. It means like enough protein and then carbs and not much fat. And I think for most people, that's probably the way to go. I really don't know that many people who struggle to get in enough fat. Occasionally, you do see it,
no matter what.
but
It gets in.
Yeah,
I usually look for that kind of ratio. Like I want like double the protein to fat usually. Like when I'm eating food, just on general, like for even meat and stuff, it's like, okay, it's at least double. So that's good.
Getting in fat's not the challenging part for most people. And I would say in general, Chinese food is not too greasy or oily, with a few exceptions like Hunan food. That's where my wife is from. Is often fairly oily or greasy. And so yeah, when I go back to her hometown, often there's stuff like that, but it's also only for a week or two, and so it's really not that big a deal. And I still lose weight anyway when I'm there. So yeah, for me, I kind of just eat whatever I want. But again, I don't count calories, and I probably wouldn't even if I did a bodybuilding show. But the cost of that is kind of having a good amount of regularity in your meal timing and in your meal choices, so that you can make adjustments as you need. Whereas if you count calories, you lose that flexibility, but you can have a greater variety of food choices and fit that in.
Yeah. And something that I do, which I don't really hear people talk about, is I like things that have individual portions. So I mentioned like the dumplings, like I have like 12 dumplings. For me, that's better than a plate of food with the same macros because I'll eat the plate of food in like 30 seconds. But when there's these individual pieces, I'm more mindful because I just take my time more. And I know that's like it shouldn't make any difference, but for some reason it makes a difference for me.
Yeah, I think this is where knowing yourself and kind of modifying your food environment in addition to like your goals, or in accordance with your goals rather, is a good idea. And for me, yeah, if I'm cutting, I definitely move more towards the volume eating side of things where I'm looking for more fiber, I'm looking for more bulk. I might eat more fruits. Like when people say fruit makes you fat, I'm like, I don't know, man. It's actually pretty filling and not that high in calories, tons of micronutrients. And so yeah, I tend to modify my diet pretty effortlessly compared, depending on where I'm going. Whereas if I'm bulking up, it's kind of just, oh, am I hungry? Then I eat.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think you have to eat those high fiber foods if you're cutting. Like I eat like a giant salad every day. It's just easy. Like that's just, I wasn't even thinking about, that's just on the side. Like there's a giant salad and it just gets eaten and you get some micronutrients and you get some volume.
That's the biggest thing that I see when people are trying to cut down. And here, some practical advice. I see someone's breakfast. I'm like, all right, well, you're eating a few eggs or something. All right, it's not bad, but all right. Lunch, okay, rice and chicken. Are there vegetables in there? I would hope so, but sometimes there's not. And then for dinner, there's like maybe a potato or something. It's like, all right, well, you might be getting in like 5 or 10 grams of fiber or something. It's like it's just not enough. And someone's like, oh, I'm hungry all day. Yeah, you haven't eaten anything to really fill yourself up. So yeah, that's the biggest thing that I've seen when cutting. I think there was a study on some American high school, maybe in Georgia, I want to say. And out of 600 students, I think 2 were getting in the recommended amount of fiber. So it's like most people are not getting in enough and could definitely benefit from more.
Cool. All right, man. As I close this channel, something I think a lot is the concept of shelf life of information. Some info we learn is useful for decades, while a lot is just short term and maybe not even useful tomorrow. Is this something that you think about? And what challenges do you think lifters have with the amount and the quality of info that we have?
Yeah, so I think the biggest issue is getting distracted by stuff that might matter a tiny amount to some lifters, but won't matter more to most lifters. So they're focusing on tiny details like, oh, my arm path when I'm doing a cable pull down, or should I do 3 sets or 4 sets, or 6 reps or 8 reps, or like what is the most optimal thing, without kind of realizing just showing up is really important. And often those people are not, they're almost like procrastinators, right? Why would I go to the gym unless I have the perfect program? I'm not going to waste my time lifting weights unless I know it's perfect. And so, yeah, just showing up, super important. Working hard and learning how to push a set, super important. Making sure that the muscle you're trying to target is actually the limiting factor, super important. So the technique, the effort, the consistency. I actually really like Dr. Eric Helms's muscle and strength pyramids, where it says, hey, like, these are the most important things. And then these other things, they matter, but not nearly as much. And you should make sure that you're doing the big things before focusing on the small things. And in terms of information that lasts, it's never the important things that go viral. It's the stupid small things that tend to go viral, right? Like, oh, the red X, don't do this, do this. I can't tell you how many times I've seen an infographic where someone says, like, this is the wrong way. And I'm like, I don't know, man. That looks exactly the way I'm doing it. And I've been seeing really good results. So, and I'm bigger than this guy who's putting out the information. So, I don't know. I'm not going to change what I'm doing. So I see that pretty often. And I think doing an audit of not just your program, but of the entire process as a whole can be very, very valuable. It is hard for some people to even do that, though, because they don't know what's important and what's not important, because a lot of the people that they find first just aren't very good sources of information. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten an email saying, oh, first I discovered blah, 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 big channel. And then it didn't work. And I was not happy with the results. And so then I found this other channel. They found like this moderate sized YouTuber or whoever. And like, it was better, but I wasn't quite happy. Oh, then I stumbled across you guys who have like tens of thousands to maybe 100,000-ish followers. And there's just almost this inverse relationship between how big a content creator is and the quality of information that they give. And it's not always the case, right? Like there are some guys who put out really good information
course.
with a huge fan base. And then there are some smaller creators who are small for a reason because they don't actually put out good information. But it's not nearly as much of a linear type of relationship. Big channel equals good, small channel equals bad. And there's definitely a case to be made for that being the opposite. So a lot of the best information, it's hard to find. It's hard to find nuance. It's hard to find people who actually have the experience and know how to talk about the details. I mean, a lot of the most successful natural bodybuilders, they don't have big followings because they don't care, right? They're just doing their own thing. They're training hard. They might upload some stuff. They might not even be on social media. And so it's one of those things where finding the good information can sometimes take a few years, partly because there is so much information. You got to wade through all the gimmicky stuff and the gurus to find the quality information. And yeah, that can take some time.
I think that's well said. I think everyone kind of starts at the Athlete X V Shred as your first thing that you get when you look for fitness content, and then you have to kind of make your way through that. I found Sean Nalawani's content very quickly. And part of the reason I did the podcast is I think one of my better skills is like assessing the quality of people and their knowledge. Like that's just a skill I have in general. So it's like, okay, I want to interview quality people. And I think in general, I've done a pretty good job of that. I wouldn't say it's perfect. But I was able to get to good information quickly because I recognized good information, and I'm able to discount bad information pretty quickly. But I've even seen people at the gym, people are super into fitness. So I'm like, what do you watch? And they're like, I watch Jesse James West and Togi or Toji. And I'm like, I don't even understand what you're learning here, like how to be a degenerate gambler and how to do some things. It's entertainment. Like, I think there's also, because you're talking about like people who are maybe obsessed with like nuance and being optimal. And I think that's one group. And then there's another group of people who think they're getting better at lifting, but it's strictly entertainment content that they're taking, but they think it's fitness content.
Yeah, no. What for me, I like being entertaining, and you have to be entertaining, I think, to a certain extent. I mean, I've sometimes gotten DMs from people who are like, man, my channel just isn't growing. Do you have advice? And I go over to their channel, and it's like, if I can't get through a video because someone doesn't sound excited about what they're doing, other people are not going to as well. When I first started out on YouTube, my average watch time on a video was like 15 seconds. It was like people would just show up and then be like, well, nah, this is just not good. But whenever I have a choice between entertainment and education, if I'm ever on the fence, I go for education every time. Yeah. Because entertainment, I mean, I think you spice it in a little, you toss in a little bit sometimes, but it's just easy for that to become the entire video. And then you're not really helping people. And so that's kind of why I started doing this whole thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you do have to have a certain type of personality, and you have to be entertaining. I don't think there's any way around that. And I remember when I started sales, people were like, how are you so good at talking on the phone? And I was like, I think I just watched a lot of wrestling. Like I was trying to think, like, why am I good at talking? I'm like, I guess I just watched a lot of wrestling and pretended to be a wrestler. Like it ends up being the most random stuff on why you might be good at something. I'm like, I thought I was The Rock. Like I acted as I was The Rock. And I'm like, I guess that makes me better at talking than everyone else here on the phone. Like super random.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And then we're talking about watch time. I have no idea, but my watch time on average is like 20 minutes, 18, 20 minutes. I think that's good, but I have no idea.
More than mine, for sure.
But my videos are like an hour or 2 hours long. So I think that that plays a part. All right, so I'm going to end today. I'm going to throw a picture on the screen here. Tell me your first thoughts. And then also, what do you want your legacy to be in the fitness world?
All right, it's loading up. Oh wow. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here. There's I guess we'll start from the top left. That's a picture where I don't know exactly how old I am there. Maybe 7 or 8. I'm reading a book on, I believe, World War II tanks and armored vehicles and weaponry. So nerding out to that. And let's see, 2020 April goals: 4,500 Instagram followers, YouTube 1,500 subscribers, Quora 30 million views. I haven't written on Quora in a long time. Let's see, training plan 50, book sales 150. I made most of those. Find my gym. I can't even read that one.
Yeah, I'm not expecting you to read through them all. You can just give your overall take. Like, what do you want your legacy? You don't have to go through every photo unless you want to.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I would typically set like monthly goals, and then some sort of physique pictures. The top 2 are before lifting. The bottom left is 2023, I think. And then the bottom right was maybe a month ago or so. So yeah, that's almost 11 years into lifting. It'll be 11 years in a couple weeks. And so, and then the top right is a 5K finishing time from high school, I guess, probably.
It is.
Yeah. So not a very good time, 20-ish minutes. I think it was a pretty tough course. And I was, it's funny. I was not a very good runner in high school. And I was much better in university. Not good enough to walk on the team, but I got much, much better, much, much faster. But I never really competed at my best. And it's one of those things where if you enjoy something, you don't necessarily need to compete. Like I get asked about, oh, you got to compete. Like, we got to see you on stage, that kind of thing. And it's, I think if you enjoy something, that is reason enough to do it. And then what's the bottom right? Looks like
that's just your current subscriber count.
Yeah. I don't know. In terms of legacy, I guess I'm not too concerned with it. Like for me, what people think of me is not the most important thing. Like that's not the reason why I do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, when someone says, "Oh, I don't care at all what people think of me," they're usually lying. Those kinds of people usually care more than most people. So I care a little bit, but ultimately, it's about helping people and kind of remembering why I started and trying to keep learning and putting out good information. Maybe at some point I'll have more subscribers than I have now, but I'm not necessarily in any rush to get there.
Awesome. GVS, man. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. Where can everyone find you?
So yeah, Geoffrey Schofield, YouTube, Instagram, and then verityfit.com for books.
Awesome. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.